मम ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदगमनं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान सागन ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिने नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्णा. So welcome everyone to our series on Bhagavad Gita. We have completed 14 chapters. We are starting the 15th chapter today. So the plan is the 15th chapter will be done in 2 sessions, 16th also in 2, 17th also in 2. So basically in another 6 sessions we will do 15, 16, 17. And then finally 18th chapter will take almost 6 sessions. So as I always say, I'm focusing on that parts of the commentary of Sripad Ramanacharya, which is different from what we have learned from Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. So as usual, we begin with the verse which summarizes the 15th chapter, which is by Sripad Yamunacharya. So this is Girtartha Sangraha, a verse which summarizes the 15th chapter. Achin Mishrat Vishuddhat Chetanat Purushottamah Vyapanat Baranat Swamyat Anya Pancha Dashoditah. So Sripad Yamunacharya says Purushottama Sriman Narayana, who is different from the Baddha Jivatmas, who are mixed with the Achetana body in samsara, and the Mukta Jivatmas, who are pure, since they are devoid of contact with samsara, since he pervades them, since he bears them, and since he is their owner, is told about in the 15th Adhyaya of the Bhagavad Gita. Very beautiful summary once again. So, just to recap, Yamunacharya and Ramanacharya both say that from chapters 13 to 18, Krishna is speaking of concepts which he has already touched upon in the first 12 chapters, but he could not elaborate much. So they consider 13 to 18 chapter as an appendix to the first 12 chapters, where the 13th, 14th and 15th chapter is speaking about Tattva. Tattva means Achit, Chit and Ishvara. That means there is matter, there is spirit and there is Paramatma. 3 concepts which are part of Tattva, which is spoken in the 13th, 14th and 15th chapters, and 16th, 17th, 18th chapters is speaking about the yoga path. Hita it is called. So basically they say there are 2 things. There is Tattva and there is Hita. Tattva means Satchit, the Achit, Chit and Ishvara. That means matter, spirit and super soul, or Paramatma or Lord Krishna, Narayana. And Hita means the yoga system, because that is Hita. By practice of yoga system only, one is going to basically prosper and progress in life. So that is why that is called as Hita. So in Tattva, the 13th and 14th chapter mainly spoke about only Achit and Chit. So if you recall, the entire 13th chapter was about, by and large, about Chit only, about Atma. And 14th chapter was about Achit, because the 3 modes of nature were explored. Now the 15th chapter is going to speak about Ishvara. So what is the connection? So they say in the 14th chapter, if you recall, at the end of the 14th chapter, what was Krishna's point? Right? Krishna told Arjuna that if you want to cross the 3 modes of material nature, then you have to surrender unto him. Mam chayo avyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate. So that was almost the end verse of the 14th chapter. It was the 26th verse. But the 14th chapter ended by talking about how when the Jivatma surrenders to the Paramatma or Sriman Narayana or Krishna, then that is an easy process to cross over the three modes of material nature. We discussed this elaborately last time. So because of that, in the 15th chapter now, the glories of the super soul are going to be said. That means Ishvara. That is why it is called as a Purushottama Yoga. So Purusha and Uttama, that means it is about the Purushottama is referring to the Ishvara. Right? And this is, so both of them say, Ramanacharya and Vinacharya, they say that this particular chapter, 15th chapter, is in some way an extension or an appendix to chapter 7 to 12. Because in chapter number 7 to 12 in Bhagavad Gita, the glory of the of Narayana or Krishna has already been said. But still some more things are left to be stated. And that is what is going to be covered in this particular chapter. And what is going to be covered? Now, if you look at this verse again, the summary verse, so beautifully Amanacharya says, this Purushottama who is there, he is different from Achin Mishra. Look at that word, Achin Mishra. Achin means matter. Mishra means, someone who is combined with matter. And who is that fellow who is combined with matter? The Baddhatma. He is mixed up with matter, right? So Baddha Jiva means he's Chet, but he's mixed with matter. I mean, he's having material body and material senses and he's roaming around with that. So he's different from Baddha. Purushottama is different from Baddha and also from Vishuddhacha. From the Mukta also he is different. Okay, so Ramanacharya in his commentary, what he says is, he says there are totally 5 truths if you want to split it even more. So at one level, there are only 3. Ishvara, this is Supreme Lord. Then there is Chit, which is the Jivatmas. And there is Achit, which is matter. But this Chit also, he says, is of 3 types. There is Baddha, there is Mukta, and there is Nitya. Okay, so what is the definition? Baddha means Baddhatmas, all of us, conditioned living entities. This is Achin Mishra. Mukta is those who achieve Mukti, Moksha, and who go back to the spiritual world. And Nitya is who are always there, who never come here. That means the Nitya and Mukta, they are in the same place, but the difference is the Mukta at one point of time was here, but attained Mukti. But the Nitya is always there. So it's a beautiful commentary. So what he says is, look at the 5 fingers of the hand. So he says the 5 fingers, the small finger, he says, can be like the Achit, matter. Then the ring finger is like the Baddha. The middle finger is like the Mukta. The index finger is like the Nitya. And the thumb, he says, is the Ishvara. So why does he give such an example? He says, because among all these 5 fingers, if you carefully see, the most crucial is the thumb. That means anything these 4 fingers want to do, they cannot do without the thumb. All of them need the thumb to do. Like you want to sign something, right? You want to, for any activity that you want to do using these 4 fingers, the example here is without the thumb, none of these fingers can do anything. They will all need the help of the thumb to do anything. Okay. So the thumb here, he's saying, is compared to the super soul, the Paramatma here, who's different from all these 4, and these 4 completely depend on him. So this is like an example. But more importantly, he says 3 things he does, this Purushottama: Vyapanat, Paranat, and Swamyat. Look at these beautiful words. Vyapanat means he pervades them. Okay. Paranat means he maintains them. So all those verses are going to come in the 15th chapter, right? Like for example, he's saying that he is only the Jataragni in the belly of everyone who is ensuring that the digestion takes place. So he's Paranat. Literally, he's maintaining all of us. And similarly, there are verses in the 15th chapter which says that he enters the planets and he's holding them up. Rama Vishyacha Bhutani, Dharayami Aham Ojasa. So all those verses come. So he pervades, he bears, and he's also the owner of all. Swamyat. Swamyat means he's the owner of all these 4 things. Okay, so again, remember this example. This is the thumb is the Ishvara, this is the matter, the Baddha, the ring finger is the Baddha, middle finger is the Mukta, and index finger is the Nitya. So this person, he is pervading, bearing the Paramatma, he is pervading them all, bearing them all, and he is their owner also. He is the owner of all this. Right? And this is going to be said in the 15th chapter. So, right, very good. So we'll go into the verses directly. And yeah. Shri Bhagavan Vacha, Urdhamula Madashakam Ashwattam Prahurabhyam, Chandamsi Yasya Paranani, Yastam Vedasa Vedavida. Bhagavan Sri Krishna says the system of material existence, samsara, is declared by the Vedas to be a wonderful people tree, which, unlike a normal tree, has its roots above and the branches below, and it is said to be imperishable tree as it has a continued existence. And the leaves of this tree are the Vedas. The one who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. Okay, so there are some differences in the translation and the commentary here. I'm focusing only on that. One thing, obviously, you will see is that the Ashwatha, he has translated it as a people tree. In Prabhupada's translation, it is a banyan tree. Anyway, so he's calling here it as the people tree. But more importantly, another major difference in the commentary is, which is again very beautiful. Prabhupada's commentary primarily focuses on how the material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. Correct? That's the main theme of Prabhupada's commentary, which is obviously in line with the text. Certainly, this would be coming from some Acharya's commentary. Ramanujacharya gives a slightly different commentary here, though. So what he basically says is, he says, since in this chapter, see, now what was the theme which we said? Krishna wants to say how he is Bharanat Swamyat of everybody. He is the owner of everybody. So Ramanujacharya starts his commentary by saying the Lord wants to say that he is the owner. He is the Swami of all the Nityas, the Muktas, and the Baddhas. So in order to say he is the owner of the Nityas and the Muktas, the first thing the Lord has to do is clarify who is a Mukta. Okay, so before saying that I am the Lord of the Mukta, he has to clarify who is Mukta. Only then he can say that, okay, I am the Lord of the Mukta. So, in order to, before saying I am the Lord of all the Muktas, you have to say what is Mukti. And that is why the chapter begins like this. So, this is how he explains. And he explains this verse by saying that the samsara is compared as an Ashwatha. So why Ashwatha? He says something very interesting. Svana stasyati iti Ashwatha. So this is a Sanskrit commentary. Swaha means tomorrow. Na stasyati, it will not remain. It's called Ashwatha. So literally the word Ashwatha in Sanskrit, other than people tree or whatever, it also means what will not be there tomorrow is called Ashwatha in Sanskrit. So that is another meaning to Ashwatha. Please remember. So at one level, Ashwatha is translated as a people tree or whatever tree. But another level, Ashwatha means Swaha na stasyati. Tomorrow, what is not there. So the samsara says that tomorrow it is not going to be there. It is the samsara. Okay. And another thing is, that means it is surely not going to be there. Basically, it is temporary. That's one thing. Second thing he says is why it is called as a vriksha. Why is the samsara compared to a vriksha? Because he says ultimately the samsara has to be cut down by everybody. Everybody has to cut down this samsara. That means every living entity has to attain liberation one day or the other. Okay, so the samsara has to be cut down. That is why it is compared to a vriksha. And then why is this vriksha compared with the roots above and branches below? Why is it given like that comparison? Please remember, in the Bhagavad Gita as it is, we have learned it because it's a reflection. Here the commentary is slightly different. So in his commentary, what he says is, he says the root is above and the branches are below because he says Brahmaji is the root and the root is at the top. Okay, so generally the roots are bottom, but in this tree, Brahmaji is at the top. So he is the root of everything. He starts the creation. And the whole samsara is created by him. So the commentary is that this vriksha is considered an inverted people tree because Brahmaji is the root at the top, and this is basically the initial Srishti. This is called Naimittika Srishti. The Naimittika Srishti means the Srishti which takes place at certain intervals because Brahmaji is not creating continuously. Correct? Only at the end of the day of Brahma, when everything is at night, when everything is destroyed, the next day morning he creates everything. Or He creates everything. When the new Brahma comes up, again he has to create it. So it is called Naimittika Srishti. There is another word called Nitya Srishti that we will see in the next verse what that is. But Ramanuja says that this verse is talking about Naimittika Srishti, occasional creation, where Brahmaji is the root and he is creating all these planetary systems. Correct? And in this way, the samsara has been created. And very interestingly, Ramanujacharya quotes from various Upanishads and Yajurveda. There a similar verse comes. See, this is why we also understand Gita as Upanishad, because it is in line with the Vedas and the Upanishads. So he says, for example, in the Kathopanishad, this comes that Urdhvamula Avakshaka Yesha Ashwatta Sanatana. So this is a verse in Upanishad, Kathovalli, part of the Kathopanishad. Then there is in Yajurveda, there is a mantra, Urdhvamula Adashaka Vrikshoyo Veta Samprati. In Yajurveda, the meaning of this verse in Yajurveda is only one who understands samsara is in knowledge. That means to be in knowledge means you should understand the nature of samsara. You should know what the samsara is. That is what Yajurveda is saying. So Ramanuja raises a question saying that in this verse, the word avyayam is used. Avyayam means what? Imperishable. So he says, why avyayam word is used? Because we just said tree means it has to be cut down. So if something has to be cut down, then why are you saying that it is an imperishable tree? So he says, so it seems a contradiction, right? On one hand, you're calling it a tree, and then you're saying that tree means it has to be one day or the other cut down. And then you're saying that tree is avyayam also, it is imperishable. Why like that? And he says, because there has to be detachment. There has to be detachment, and only then one can cut down this tree. Otherwise, this tree will keep being there. That is, if you don't get virakti from the samsara, the tree is not going to cut very easily. Yeah, this is going to remain perpetually. I mean, as in almost perpetually, like that. So that is how he says we can reconcile the contradiction. Then another point he says the chanda here, the word the chanda, chandamsi, this word is referring to the Vedas. Generally, chandas refers to meter. Like there are various Gayatri, it's a meter. There are different meters in which you can chant mantras. But here the explanation is Chandamsi means it is referring to the Vedic hymns, which are the leaves. Why are the Vedic hymns called the leaves? So he gives very beautiful explanation. He says at one level, these Vedic hymns are the leaves because they have all this Kamya karma and they only nourish the tree. That means only when one does all this Kamya karma, when you do karma according to the Veda, then you get prosperity in a material sense, and thus this tree is maintained. That is why it is called, the leaves are called as the Chanda, the Vedic hymns, because they maintain this samsara. But also he says, a beautiful explanation, he says, they cover the reality of the misery of this world. Just like the leaves cover the trunk of the tree. Sometimes, when a tree has a lot of leaves, then the trunk is completely covered up. Similarly, he says the misery of this world is covered up by all this kamya karma. One can go to heaven, one can enjoy all these concepts are there, because of which the misery is covered up. And also they maintain the tree. Because of it, they maintain. Okay. So understand, then he says the question, understands the tree means what? Because here it says, one who understands the tree is the knower of the Vedas. What do you mean by understanding the tree? Understanding the tree means what? He's asking a question. So he says understanding the tree means to know how to escape from the samsara. That is what it means by understanding the tree. That means to know how you are caught up and how you will experience. Okay, so of course, many of these things are similar to the commentary of Prabhupada. I'm not going into that. But only this part was the different part. Right, let's go into the next verse. We will do 9 verses today. अधश्चोर्ध्वं प्रसृतास्तस्य शाखा गुणप्रवृद्धा विषयप्रवालाः अधश्च मूलान्यनुसन्ततानि कर्माणुबन्धीनि मनुष्यलोके. The branches of this tree extend both upwards and downwards, nourished by the 3 gunas of Prakriti. The sense objects generated by these gunas are like the buds of the tree. The roots of the tree continue below the world of human beings, where karma is performed with the Jivatma, is the cause for further bondage in samsara. Okay, so this commentary is again very similar to Prabhupada, so I'll not say so much about the translation. But in the commentary, one or two things which are different are, he says that, Ramanuja says that this verse is focusing on Nitya Srishti. So the previous verse, if you recall, we had called it Naimittika Srishti. That is occasional creation, because Brahma doesn't create every time. But this verse is Nitya Srishti. Nitya Srishti means what? Continuously people are dying and being born. And why and what they are doing when they are dying and being born? The branches are going up and down. Up and down means somebody goes to Swarga and then he goes to Naraka and it's coming up and down like that. And what is the water which is nourishing? The three modes. Initially, Brahma gave body, and that is the first time. But later, as per the three modes, you are nourishing it to get another body, like that. And what are the fruits and flowers? The sense objects. They are the fruits and flowers. And the roots are also in human society. See, now previously roots were only at the top, but now roots are down also. Because in human society, you start a new karma. So just like in that people tree, if you know, the roots come down and then a new thing starts, right? A new creation starts. Okay, so that is why Ramanuja says that this verse focuses on Nitya Srishti. That means continuous creation, which we are all engaged in. Okay, so the whole perspective, now why is all this being said? All this is being said in order to say who is Muktatma and finally say that that Muktatma is my property. Because that is the focus of this chapter. The focus of this chapter is the Paramatma who is there. He is the owner, he is the Swami, he is the maintainer, he is bearing all these other four categories. Yeah. The next verse. न रूपमस्येह ततोपलभ्यते नान्तो न चादिर्न च सम्प्रतिष्ठा अश्वत्थमेनं सुविरूढमूलम् अशङ्कशस्त्रेण दृढेन चित्वा. The tree of samsara is not understood in the aforementioned manner by samsaris. The beginning of this tree, being immersed in the experience of the three gunas, is not known. The means for destroying this tree, detachment from worldly pleasures, is not known. The foundation of the tree of samsara, ignorance, is not known. Using the sharp axe of disinterestedness in worldly enjoyments, cut off this Ashwatha tree called samsara, which is deeply rooted and many rooted. Okay, so now in this verse, Krishna is very clearly saying what it means to understand samsara. It's basically something to understand samsara doesn't mean to understand like, okay, this is a bench, this is a tree, this is physics, this is chemistry, and so on. Samsara means to understand that there are these five objects of senses, Vishaya Pravalaha, right? And to understand the three modes, to understand karma. So when are you supposed to understand samsara? The answer is first you have to understand samsara. Without understanding samsara, you cannot get mukti. Okay, mukti can be, that means ordinary people who don't understand what is being said in this verse have no chance of getting mukti. And what is it about samsara that one needs to know? Three things are said here. How to destroy this tree, that is detachment from worldly pleasures. Okay, and look at that translation again. Asanga Shastrena. He says disinterestedness in worldly enjoyment. See, the whole focus of Gita is not disinterestedness from work itself. It is from the enjoyment, right? So because see, we'll have to connect everything back to the Nishkama Karma, which Krishna started off, right, from the third chapter. Krishna's whole point is that you have to keep engaging yourself in the world, but not get attached. So that is the Asanga. Okay, so how to cut the tree is basically being said here. How to cut the tree. So suvirudha moolam. So this word also Ramanujacharya emphasizes a lot. Suvi. Su means is a sushti vividha. That means very deeply rooted. Suvirudha means deeply rooted. Basically, what is the way to break this? The only way is, he says, is the 7.14 verse of Bhagavad Gita, where we have to surrender unto the Supreme Lord. Only then one can break this. Okay. And then he also says Shastra word is used here. So there are two words in Sanskrit. One is called Astra and one is called Shastra. Okay. So Astra means something that you throw, like the javelin. That is Astra. Arrows are Astra because you throw it. You don't keep it with yourself. Shastra means you keep it in your hand and fight. like a mace, like an axe, like a bow. These are all called Shastra. So Astra means you have to just throw it. Like our Neeraj Chopra is expert in that javelin, right? That is thrown. That is Astra. But here the axe is used. That is why it is called as Shastra. And because that axe you should always have in your hand. Where detachment is not something you just throw it. It has to be continuously applied as long as you are in the samsara. That is why Shastra is used. Even these are very fine things, but to understand why the certain Sanskrit word is used. So Dridam, he says, Ramanujacharya says Dridam is used because the detachment which the Bhagavad Gita is talking has to be a very deep rooted detachment. He says it cannot be because somebody fought with his wife. Then he cannot say that I am taking sannyas because I fought with my wife or because I have some disease. Now I'm not going to be interested in luxurious food stuff. No, he says that is not detachment. But detachment means something it has to be dridam, it has to be very, very deep. Only then you can cut down this thing. And besides the detachment, what else you need? You go to the next verse. ततः पदं तत्परिमार्गितव्यं यस्मिन् गता न निवर्तन्ति भूयः कमेव चाद्यं पुरुषं प्रपद्ये यतः प्रवृत्ति पुरुषा पुराणी प्रसृता पुराणी. And by the strong detachment towards sense objects, one should seek the realization of the pure state of the Jivatma, having attained which one does not return to the stream of samsara again. Surrender yourself unto that primeval person, Sriman Narayana alone, due to whose will the Jivatmas are bound in this Prakriti as per their karma from beginningless time and are immersed in material enjoyments as per their vasanas. Okay, so again, beautiful commentary. Here there are some things which need to be emphasized. So the first thing is with that detachment, one has to not only cut down the tree, but also one has to search the Paramapada which one wants to attain. Okay, so this Paramapadam now here could either mean the Kaivalya Mukti or it can mean those who go back to the spiritual world. So both are included actually. Okay, so if somebody says that this verse is referring to those who are going to Brahman, they are not wrong. Because Krishna only says Padam Parimargitavit. So Ramanujacharya also says that yes, it can mean that also. But ultimately it can also mean those who go back to the spiritual world. Okay. And he doesn't come back to the samsara. Surrender yourself to that primeval Lord Sriman Narayana alone. So the process is given. So one process is cutting down the tree by detachment. Another process is to prapadhye, to do prapatti. Prapatti means to sharanagati, surrender to Adya Purusha. Here, one part of the commentary is very, very interesting. This last word which is there, Yata Pravritti Prasrita Purani. See, Purani means old. Okay. The pravritti or the pravritti of the living entities is very old. Our vasanas are very old. See, these are different translations from what Prabhupada has given. Prabhupada speaks about Purani as the Supreme Lord's abode, which is very old. Like that is it. That means since time immemorial, everything has extended from him. So this Purani, Prabhupada associates, see, this is the beauty in Sanskrit. There are three meanings now we are going to explore. At one level, Purani means, which Prabhupada uses Purani as referring to Adya Purusha. That means the Supreme Lord is old and since time immemorial, like that translation he gives. Ramanuja, what he says, he gives two different translations. One translation is given here, another is part of the commentary. We'll explain both. One translation is says, Yata Pravritti Prasita Purani. Pravritti. Pravritti means, here Pravritti is referring to the conditioned nature of the Jivatma. And this is Purani. That means, since time immemorial, we all have so many vasanas, right? Our vasanas are not new. They are Purani. Very, very old vasanas we have. And due to all these vasanas, we are caught up, right? And we have to break all this and go back. So this is one meaning. Okay. There is another meaning comes Purani. Now here all the other words also change, by the way. The second meaning that Ramanujacharya gives, Purani, other word means, in the olden times, many people have come back to me. Just like if all of you recall 4.10 Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, right? Many people in the past have also come back to me. He says like that in 4.10. So he uses that over here and says this prapadyate. Prapadyate, this word comes now in this verse. It can be split in two ways. See the beauty of Sanskrit. It can be split either as prapadyet itaha or it can be split as prapadya yataha. So if it is split as prapadyet itaha, then the translation becomes like what we are seeing on the screen now. That is surrender unto him and get rid of all your vasanas which are very, very purani, old. But if you split that prapadyatetaha as prapadya and yataha, then it means surrender like those who did in the past. Yataha means the other people who have done in the past, Purani. So then that Purani gets associated with that Yataha. The beauty of Sanskrit. The verse can be the same, but the meanings can be many. Okay, so I said already there are three meanings we have seen of this verse. In Prabhupada's translation, that Purani is associated with Adya Purusha. Here the Purani is associated either with the pravritti, your own conditioned natures, which are very, very vasanas, which are very old, or Purani is associated with another word, yataha, which basically means since olden times, many people have done surrender unto Krishna and gone back to the spiritual world, and we can also go like that. So that meaning also comes in this particular verse. It's such a beautiful thing. And those who really relish Sanskrit would like to see how the same verse, just by playing with the words, you can get several meanings and all are correct simultaneously. Correct? So it's a beautiful thing. Okay. Now, how does such a person surrender? So that surrender process is given in the next chapter. So this is all about Muktatma, remember? Huh? So Ramanuja's perspective is 15.1 to 15.5. Krishna is saying how a person becomes Muktatma. How he cuts down the samsara and goes back to the spiritual world. Nirmana jita sanga dosha adhyatma nitya vinivritta kamaha द्वन्द्वैर् विमुक्ता सुखदुःख संज्ञैर्गच्छन्त्य मूढा पदमव्ययं तत्. Getting free from the delusion of misconceiving the body of self, having conquered the evil of attachment of worldly sense pleasures, ever engrossed in the contemplation of the knowledge of the Jivatma, having become fully free from the desire for anything other than the Jivatma, being free from the dualities of pleasure, pain, etc. Those who are highly knowledgeable about the nature of the Jivatma and the nature of the Kshetra, such people who have taken refuge in me and thus developed all above characteristics, attain the pure state of Jivatman with its knowledge in full measure without any contradiction. Okay, so here he says that this entire verse is talking about the process of the Muktatma going. So one thing it was said earlier that he will cut down the tree with detachment and he will surrender to the Supreme Lord. But the details of how he surrenders has been given here. First thing, he has to become free from identifying the body as a self. Secondly, he has to control his senses. Third thing, he has to contemplate on the knowledge of the Jivatma. Then free from desire of anything else other than Jivatma, free from dualities of this world. Correct? So all these things and knowledgeable about the nature of the Jivatma and then taking refuge in the Lord. Gachanti. Okay? Then only you will achieve the pure state of the Jivatma. Now, this pure state of the Jivatma can either be Kaivalya or it can be Bhagavan Labharti, attaining the spiritual world. Both meanings are applicable in this verse. Okay, so the devotees will like to see this verse as going back to the spiritual world, but the others will like to see this as, if you see Shankaracharya's commentary, it will be only about attaining Kaivalya, which is fine because the verse accommodates both. Right, because Krishna has spoken it in such a way that you can see it like that also. So this verse is talking about the details of it. This is very well explained in Prabhupada's commentary, and it's very similar to that commentary here. So I'm not going to say more on this. We are going ahead to the sixth verse, and the sixth verse is a very very unique commentary here. So we'll spend some time on that. Very famous verse. Natad bhase te suryo na shashanko na pavakaha yadgatva na nivartante tadhama paramam mama. Look at his translation. After attaining whom one never returns back to the mundane existence of samsara. That supreme effulgent Jivatma is my wealth. The Jivatma is not illuminated by the sun or the moon or fire. He is self-luminant. Okay, so this verse, Ramanujacharya says, this brings an end to one series of verses. And what is the series of verses? How the Muktatma is my property, Krishna is saying. So see, most of us who have read Prabhupada's commentary, we know that there Prabhupada talks about that Dhamma is a spiritual world, correct? If you know Prabhupada's translation, it is the supreme abode of mind is not illuminated by the sun or the moon. Like that he has translated. That means that Dhamma is the abode of the Lord, because that is there in the verse. So his translation is slightly different here. So what he says is, here that Dhamma, he is calling that Dhamma as the destination of this Jivatma. See, till now in the first five verses, what we were talking about. He was talking about samsara, correct? So the samsara has to be cut down by detachment, and then you surrender the Supreme Lord. And then finally, that after cutting down all that, one attains that state of pure Jivatma, right? That means here the Dhamma, I mean, that same Sanskrit word Dhamma he uses to talk about the effulgent Jivatma. That means the Mukta Jivatma. So that Mukta Jivatma is the Dhamma, and that is Paramam Mama. That is my property, Krishna wants to say. That is how the translation is. Okay, so the Muktatma is my property. The fellow who has got Mukti is owned by me. And what is the nature of that Muktatma? That Muktatma is not illuminated by sun, moon, or fire. He is self-illuminated. So this Natat Bhasate Suryo Shashanka Pavakaha, Ramanuja, he translates it by saying that Jivatma who is Mukta now, he doesn't need sun, moon, fire and all. He is self-luminant. See, because the whole idea is, in this world, we need all these things. Na? Because the Jivatma cannot see anything without an extra, because we are conditioned by the body. And even though the Jivatma here also is as such self-effulgent, but currently because he's caught up in this body, if there is no light, he cannot see anything. The sun, moon, or fire, electricity, whatever. It is not there, one cannot see. But in the Mukta Avastha, the Jivatma doesn't need anything. He doesn't need sun, he doesn't need moon. He's self-effulgent now. He can see everything. So that is his characteristic. And the most important thing Ramanujacharya says this verse is that Mama, that means that Muktatma, who becomes self-effulgent after crossing this mundane samsara. He is Mukta, na? Muktatma means he has crossed over the samsara and become self-effulgent. That Muktatma is my property. So that is how so the whole translation, there is a series of connection between the previous verses. So that's how it runs. Very interesting way of looking at this particular verse, right? So here ends the first part of this particular chapter, where the Lord has said the Muktatma is my property. Okay, now the next thing the Lord wants to say is how the Baddhatma is also my property only. It's not that only the Muktatma is my property. Okay, so Mukti was also explained as part of explaining how Muktatma is Krishna's property. But now Krishna will go on to speak about how the Baddhatma is also his property. And that's from the next verse. Mamevamsho jivaloke jivabhuta sanatana manashashtani indriyani prakritistani karshati. Eternal Jivatmas who are my inseparable attributes and form my body. See, that's how he explains Mame Vamsha. That means they are also mine, like that. In accordance to their karma from beginningless time, live in this material universe in order to enjoy the worldly pleasures, drive here and there their mind and five sense organs situated in the body, which is a product of Prakriti. Okay, so this is very similar to Prabhupada's translation. I mean, the same similar translation. So here, what is the theme being said? The theme being said is that since Anadi Kala, so if you remember, even months before I had said this, Ramanujacharya and many of these acharyas, they maintain that the Baddhatma is here always. Is They don't consider that the Baddhatma has come from the spiritual world, like that they don't consider. They argue based on several of the pramanas which they give that the Jivatma is eternally conditioned, Baddhatma means is here only always. Sanatana, since the eternal time, he is sitting here only. And what is he doing? He is Karshati. So Karshati says is just like Sankarshan. Sankarshan we know, na? Sankarshan means to pull. Like Balramji is called Sankarshan because he attracted the moon from Devaki to Rohini, etc. Sankarshan, Karshati. So that means our senses are pulling us in all directions, and one is, struggling in this world, right? One important thing Ramanuja says is that everybody has one set of senses throughout their existence in material world because Manashashan Indriyani. Throughout your existence in the material world, you have only one set of senses because this set of senses is not referring to the external sense, but it is referring to the internal sense. That means when we say eyes, it's not just these eyes which are having flesh. It is that internal eye, the subtle eye, right? So each of these physical senses have their subtle counterpart. And that subtle counterpart is one pair, one set only you get in the material world. And when we are changing body to body, only the external interface changes. We get a different eye, different nose, different ear, whatever, a different body. But the sense is the same, which is constantly with us. So, like that he says. So, you have only one set of senses throughout your existence in the material world. And with that, one is loitering around. The rest of the part is very similar to Prabhupada's commentary. I'm not going more on that. Let's go to the next verse. Here, there is a slight, yeah, there is a difference here in this commentary. It spent some more time in the 8th. शरीरं यदवाप्नोति यच्चाप्युत्क्रामतीश्वरः गृहीत्वैतानि संयाति वायुर्गन्धानि वाशयात्. Just as the wind carries the subtle elements with their fragrance from the flower, sandal paste, etc. Similarly, the Jivatma, who is the master of the body and the Indriyas, migrate from whichever body he departs at the end of his life to whichever body he acquires next as per his karma, carries with him the six senses. Okay, so what are the six senses which Krishna is talking about? Again, the five senses and the mind. Five knowledge acquiring senses in the mind. Here Ramanujacharya raises a question. Then what about the five karmendriyas? That is also sense. Actually, we have 11 senses. We have five jnanendriyas, five karmendriyas, and the mind. Correct. We have actually 11 senses, and each of these five karmendriyas also have a subtle counterpart. There's a subtle hand, a subtle leg, a subtle anus, the subtle genitals, and the subtle desire to speak. So these are also senses only. But here Krishna is focusing only on the jnanendriyas. So does it mean you are not carrying the karmendriyas with you? You are carrying karmendriyas also with you only. So actually, like in the previous verse we said, right? Everybody gets one set of senses throughout their existence in the material world. So it's not that you have only the five jnanendriyas in the mind. But the 11 senses, you have only one set, which you keep changing body to body. External interface keeps changing. Sense is the same. Okay, so the conditioning is the same. That's why we are carrying our conditioning life after life, because the sense is the same. So whatever we are doing with these senses in this life, that conditioning we are carrying with us. But why the Lord is only talking about the six senses and why not about the other five senses? So that in the commentary he says that, see, because it is only the knowledge acquiring senses that give you happiness and distress. As in, he says, like for the hand, he says the sense called as the hand, the grasping sense, in itself, it doesn't give any pleasure. It will give any pleasure only when you either smell it, when you see it, when it brings something in front of you to see, to taste, to hear. That means he says these other five senses which are there, they are only helping to get things to the jnanendriya. These five, the main five senses, the knowledge acquiring senses in the mind, these are the main cause of happiness and distress. And hence, Krishna is not talking about the other five, the karmendriyas, though they are also one set only. That is one part of his commentary. Another part of his commentary is very beautiful. He says, see here, the example given is what? Vayur Gandha Ivashaya. That means he says, just like when there is Vayu which is blowing over a flower garden, then the smell of the flower comes to you, right? So somebody will ask the question, how is the smell coming to you? So the answer is, when the Vayu goes over the flower, there are some particles of the flower which the Vayu takes with itself. And those small atomic particles of the flower float with the Vayu in your direction. The Vayu is again independent only, but the Vayu has caught some of these some of these atomic particles of the flower, and it blows towards your nose, and then you can smell. When those particles enter your nose, then only you smell that flower, right? So he says, similar, why Krishna is giving this example, Ramanuja says, is because our six senses are like those particles of the flower, the subtle senses. From one body to another, Prakriti is taking it, correct? So the same smell comes in the next body. Same smell as in the same type of conditioning gets activated through a different physical interface body, right? So that's how he explains it. So this actually Prabhupada also touches on that. Prabhupada says that the living entity in the material world carries these different conceptions of life from one body to another, like that is it. So which is actually similar to this commentary only. But just that here he has elaborated a little bit more by saying that those particles of the flower which move in your direction, these particles are compared here to the six senses, which are moving from one body to another. So the same type of smell, here the smell as in the same type of vasana continues life after life. Like that. So this is how the Muktatma is, sorry, the Baddhatma is existing in this world. And who is this Baddhatma? He is owned by the Lord. That's the point. Yeah, that brings us to the last verse for today. Verse number 9. Shrotram chakshus sparshanam cha rasanam granam evacha adhisthaya manaschayam vishayanupasevate. This Jivatma employs and directs these six indriyams, the ears, the eyes, the sense of touch, the tongue and the nose and the mind for experiencing respective sense objects. Okay, so now it is becoming clear which are the six. See, till now, Krishna had not said which are the six, but now he is saying which are the six. Which are the six? Shrotram. Shrotram, again, please remember, it's not the physical ear, it is a subtle ear. Chakshu is not the physical eye, it is a subtle eye. Sparshanam is a subtle sense of touch. Rasanam is the subtle sense of taste. Grahanam is a subtle sense of smell, and the mind itself. Okay, all these things are employed for experiencing sense objects. So, because what happens is that the hands and legs are only considered the karmendriyas are only considered needs to give you this. Okay, so that's why even though you have 11 senses and you're carrying 11 senses from one body to another, Krishna is focusing only on the six senses because it is through these six senses only one is enjoying or suffering various things. It is a beautiful point, right? So that's why Krishna is speaking only about the six senses. And who is the fellow who is enjoying doing all this? He is the Baddhatma. And who is that Baddhatma? Krishna already said 3 verses before. He is my property. Mame Vamsho. He's mine. Okay. So summarizing, so the 15th chapter, Ramanujacharya says this is basically about Paramatma. Why Paramatma? Because 14th chapter spoke about surrender to Paramatma as the means to get out of the three modes of material nature. And this Paramatma, what is his characteristic? He is the Swami, he is the Bharan, Palaka, everything of all the other four. Which are the other four? The Nityas, the Muktas, the Baddhas, and the Achit, matter. He is only maintaining everybody. He is the Swami of it all. And today, in the 2 sets of verses that we saw, the first part, in the first 6 verses, Krishna is talking about how all the Muktatmas are his. And then in the next 4 verses, he's saying how all the Baddhatmas are also his property. And in that process, Krishna is defining who is a Muktatma and who is a Baddhatma. With that we end, and we'll continue with the theme next time. Any question or comment? Anybody with a raise of hand? Any question? We can take.
Roji, this senses which we carry life after life. So we are supposed to purify our mind, but are we supposed to purify these senses also?
Oh, of course. If you go back to the Bhagavatam and the Bhakti process, it is about purifying the senses. Na? That Savaya Mana Krishna Padaravinda, you remember those verses of Ambarish Maharaj. It is about the senses. See, actually, only when the senses become pure, the mind is pure, because the mind is in one sense an aggregator of all these senses. He's just bringing all these. He's bringing the sensual experiences together as one multimedia thing. Like you see, you hear, you touch, everything. Everything is got together in one thing. So purifying the mind means actually purifying the subtle senses. So that's why the subtle senses must be purified without a question. And that if you go back to that 15th chapter, verse number 5, that is what Krishna indicated, that one has to purify one's senses. It comes in that. One has to jitendriya, one has to conquer the senses. Senses is the subtle senses. Yeah.
Roji, can I ask a question?
Yeah, whoever is.
Yeah. Dinesh, yes.
Ariko.
Yeah. Roji, so our Swadharma is also a samskara that we carry from one birth to the another birth. So can we say that even Swadharma can be a binding thing for a material world? Because it is not the eternal nature of the soul. It is just more like a body in the subtle body impressions. Also, does our like Swarupa Dharma has any role in deciding our Swadharma also? Like, two questions.
Yeah, good. See, the Swadharma which is there now, it also changes, but it changes very gradually over lifetimes. So, so that's how it maintains. Because Swadharma is your that is also connected to your senses only, right? Because your conceptions of your jnanendriyas and karmendriyas which are there, especially the jnanendriyas, that only creates a Swadharma. And that Swadharma which is there, it very slowly changes over lifetimes. So generally it is said that one very slowly moves whichever direction, depending on what he is doing, how he is interacting with the modes of nature. Slowly one may change if he is continuing to remain in this world. So as such, the Swarupa Dharma and Swadharma have no connection at all, because the Swarupa Dharma is your dharma in relation to Narayana or Krishna, and the Swadharma is in relation to the subtle body only. So that is applicable only in the conditioned stage. Once when one is out of this world, then there is no Swadharma only. Okay. Now, as far as the Swadharma considered binding, please try to understand that there are two things here. What is considered binding is only uh, the I forgot the technical term, but the vasanas are binding. That means someone is attached to enjoying the world in certain ways due to lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, illusion. Those are considered binding and must be given up. But due to your senses, your desire to act in certain ways in this world, that is not considered binding per se. In fact, one cannot even come out of that so easily, come out of it at all actually. So one is supposed to act in alignment with that only. So we make a distinction between the Swadharma and the because of various anarthas of our senses only, certain proclivities. See, there are proclivities of two types. One is proclivity as per your nature, which decides the work that you do in this world. That is the Swadharma we are talking about. Another thing is the proclivities towards sinful activities, towards Papa Karya. Only that the Shastra always says is to be completely given up. But the proclivity of work, it never talks about it giving up. It only talks about it, keep engaged, but be detached from the result of that. So that is the constant hammering in Bhagavad Gita. Yeah.
So can we also make a statement that Swadharma is the most optimal way of perceiving or dealing with the world?
So, beg your pardon, Swadharma is?
Can we also say that Swadharma is the optimal way of perceiving or dealing with the world, like the
Oh, yeah,
compared to
perfect.
the other?
That statement is correct. It's the best way because your senses basically have made you suitable to a particular type of work in this world, which is most natural, right, from that sensory perspective. So that cannot be given up. So there's no question. Like for example, even among the Vegas, so all our senses have Vegas. Na? Vega means push. So there is a push to drink water, to eat food, to yawn, to sleep. Those things are never to be given up. But if the Vega is pushing us towards Papa Karya, then that has to be stopped. So that clear distinction is always there between things that are to be given up and things which The Shastra also says that, hey, you cannot give it up just like that. That is too strong for you. You better you connect it to the Lord as yoga and that dovetail it rather than trying to keep it. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Hare Krishna. Any other question? We can take, otherwise we'll stop. Okay, thank you everyone. We'll continue next time, and as I said, we will do each of these chapter in 2 sittings. This 18th chapter we will do in 6 sittings, and the culmination of that is very, very beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada ki jai.